Mm.
You know,
Everyone has a story, and what I built my company on is other people's experiences, and that's really the human journey. The human journey is us hearing, learning, listening, and then taking that and then mapping it to our own life and then moving forward, right? It's everyone has a different story. Every founder has a different story. Every career has a story behind it.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Cloud Architects podcast. We're straddling three very different time zones today. We're missing Warren. He's had a lot of other things going on, but we miss you, Warren. We'll get you on the next one. But I am joined by Nicholas Blank.
hey,
And we're very, very honored today to speak to a very special guest. I think someone who we've all known for a long time, through the community and through the industry. When we were planning this actual session or this recording a few months ago, actually now when we were in Cape Town, I said to the guys, Jay is one of my favorite human beings. That's how I described him when we were talking about this, to bring him on to the show. And so we're super happy we're able to get scheduling worked out, and Jay was willing to speak to us. So Jay Gundotra, thank you for joining us. Really sort of appreciate having you on. It's just kicking off your day, I guess, in California. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, the respect is mutually. I feel the same for both of you guys. You guys have helped me build my company, and it's awesome to be around smart people. So I'm looking forward to having some fun today.
Excellent. Well, yes, thank you. Much appreciated. And so I guess to dive in, and for folks kind of listening to this who may not think they know you, because I think once we kind of get down the track here, I think everyone's going to go, I know that guy, or I know that company. But for folks who are kind of listening to this and don't know the name, can you give us a quick just intro of kind of who you are and what you do?
So I am the technical founder and CEO of ENow Software. If you have been to Ignite, the Exchange Conference, the Link Conference, you have probably been to one of our parties. We love to have a good time, and really the parties are about the community. And I am forever indebted to the community, because I would not have the company I have today. So ENow started as in the monitoring and reporting space, and I can give you a little bit more of the history maybe later in the discussion. But what we do today is we really help keep people productive. And what that means is, obviously the world has changed. Clearly with the pandemic, the world has changed. And if people aren't productive, whether it's Outlook, whether it's SharePoint, whether it's OneDrive, whatever, they can't get their work done. So essentially we do monitoring and analytics. And there's a whole host of problems that come and challenges that come with Office 365, with Active Directory, with Exchange. And depending upon the problem, what we like to do is eliminate the frustration for the IT professional and make things simple. Being an IT professional is a thankless job. It is very, very difficult. And I think nowadays we've traded one problem for another. And obviously the cloud is amazing, but there's a whole new set of challenges. And I think the average user thinks, hey, everything should be up. Facebook is up. Instagram is up. How come our IT systems aren't up? So I have a lot of empathy for those that support technology. And of course, that goes back to my background.
Right. And it's an interesting background, right? And I think it's a very kind of valid and worthwhile topic of conversation as well, because, Nick and I think everyone knows we hold Port 25 SMTP very near and dear to our hearts, because that's, for a long time, that's what we did was Exchange and messaging. But that's a very similar background for you, though, right? As you used to be slinging tools with Exchange.
Yeah, I mean, my journey started in 1994. So my brother had the privilege of working with Bill Gates back in 91. And I was kind of one of those kids that wasn't sure on what I wanted to do when I graduated high school. And my dad was a big believer in personality tests. He was an entrepreneur, but he also knew that you just can't jump right into being an entrepreneur. It actually took me 12 years to actually start ENow. And I needed all that time, actually. I needed all that experience, all those, getting your butt kicked to kind of start the process. But when I was graduating high school, I had thoughts about potentially being a lawyer. That's what the personality test showed. They said, hey, Jay, you're analytical. You like to talk. You like to argue. So I went to work for a lawyer as an intern, and I loved being in the courthouse researching for precedent. But working for the lawyer, my lord, this person was not a good human being. He was irate. He would yell at people. He would demean them. And it really had nothing to do with the law profession. But in my mind, as a young person, I was like, wow, do I really want to be around people like this? And at that same time, my brother came to me. He was working with Bill, and obviously they wanted NT 351 to take on and beat OS2. And they hadn't had the MCSE program really back then. And so my brother came to me, and typical Indian brother, I love him to death. I wouldn't have, he introduced me to my wife as well. So he got me on this career path. I owe a lot to my brother. Yeah. He made a bet with me. He said, you know what? I don't think you're smart enough to take these tests. And he flopped the Windows for Work Group resource kit down in front of me and said, I bet you $1,000 you can't pass these tests. And I joked, my ego was hurt. So I said, sure, let's, game on. So I had a big container of Mountain Dew, cranking up Green Day, and I went through the INI files and learned everything about this, ripped through these tests. And then one day I chanced upon a job fair, and the #1 Microsoft solution provider on the East Coast in Alexandria, Virginia, a company by the name of API. Mike Atala worked there, Mike Fitzmaurice, Spiros Vakilaritis, just a lot of great people came from this company. They had a huge sign, and I walked up and said, what's the big deal about the MCSE? I got 4 or 5 tests passed. They're like, come here, come here, come here. And I essentially got a job doing that. Before I knew it, I was thrown into a gig, basically racking and stacking Exchange servers, learning Exchange.
Wow.
And through that experience of working with Exchange at the Small Business Administration, that's really where I made the connection. Like, wait a minute, this is analytical. I'm working with people. I'm impacting things. And that just started a whole career path where I became, I hate the word expert. I became an Exchange server specialist, maybe is a better word. And I got to travel the world and troubleshoot X400 connectors and, use ISE Tag and ESE util and just, it opened up a whole new world for me, which is the basis of how the company, eventually, came to be.
Wow. Wow. I actually want to say I remember those days fondly. And yes. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But one of the things I'm hearing a lot of, Jay, and it's difficult to have a conversation with you and not very quickly come to grips with the amount of passion that you have. And where does this passion come from?
That is a great question. I would say, I believe if you're gonna do anything in life, do it 110%. One of our core values is over deliver. The second one is be relentless. And life is short. Give me 1 second. I lost my dad last September, so a little bit of a raw emotion. But
yeah, sorry to hear that.
But he had taught me, if you're going to do something, basically go full force and always look to deliver value to people. And so by getting into the IT world, you got to see, hey, when the messaging system is down, people can't work. And being able to take advantage of the community, get on the forums, get answers. Obviously, the world has changed a lot. You can get on Twitter and you now connect with people over Teams. And, we can chat over Teams without having to go through news groups. But I think the sense of the community, helping people, and just living life intentionally. We're only going to be here this amount of time, and you're going to work 60 to 70 hours a week. That's more time than you spend with your family, more time than you spend with others. Do something you like, right? So I think the passion comes from that. And then the second place the passion comes from is just, I have to pitch myself every day to realize that I'm in a seat where we can solve problems for the biggest companies in the world. And it still tickles me. I drive down the road and I'll show my son, hey, there's Volkswagen, they're one of our customers, or there's Facebook. And none of that happens if it isn't for people who take a chance on a company like us. And then we get to solve problems. So I think the passion comes from that. That would be my answer.
And it's a good answer, right? I think for a lot of people kind of listening to this now, one of the messages that we're trying to get out there, I guess, as well with a lot of the guests that we're talking to or talk to is there isn't one single path into going somewhere, right? We all have this journey, and I think you kind of referred to it at the beginning of the show as the human journey, and I think that's a very, very good name for this episode as well, right? Because you could go from being kind of slinging exchange servers, as you put it, right? And you know, I think Nick and I have similar stories, and in fact, we met doing that. The two of us,
yes.
you know, we spent a lot of time in the early 2000s in, you know, government bunker data centers doing just that, right? Being locked in the data center, getting exchange servers prepped so that we could do migrations. But you could go from that and you could become, you know, a founder or a CEO from that background, because I feel like there's this sort of misperception that you have to there's a specific path you have to follow to get there, right? If you want to be a founder, you have to go do these you know, three things, and then you'll be a founder. And I think that really isn't, it's rubbish, right? And so I'm really glad to kind of hear your story, because I think it's a reinforcement that it's a journey for everyone, right? Follow your interests, be passionate.
No, I would agree completely, because I didn't plan on getting into this career, right? It started with a bet. When I was at the SBA racking and stacking servers and configuring them, we would ship them out. And back then, you know, I think the SBA had 84 offices. So we would rack them up, ship them. They would come online, and then we would, you know, obviously remotely take care of the computers, the servers. What happened there was the lead guy ended up quitting after like 8 months, and they were looking for a replacement. And the head person at the SBA said, "You should give Jay a shot." And I was like, what, you know, kind of, you know, nervous about it. So I didn't plan on continuing down that path. It just happened. Same thing with being an entrepreneur. I remember as a kid going with my dad to his work, and everyone in school saying, "Hey, you're going to be most likely to succeed. You're going to start a business." And it didn't happen until I was 30, right? I had to go through all these experiences. I don't think there's a path to being a founder. I think it's more of a mindset. Are you a curious person? And most IT professionals are curious by definition, or else you wouldn't be in this field. That's why you learn PowerShell, right? You solve problems. And at the core, a founder is somebody who solves problems. And then once you have an idea, then it becomes sheer resolve, passion, grit, resilience, because you're going to get kicked in the nuts every day, if not multiple times. I mean, so you have to have a self-care routine. There's a lot to it, but anyone can choose that path. But I think it starts with living intentionally and not just showing up to work and I'm going to go do this. Where do you want to go to find a path? And then you start charting a course, and no one knows exactly where they want to go, but directionally, do you know where you want to go? Do you want to know? Do you know where you want to be in 5 years? Essentially, right? My dad had me doing that since I was 10 or 11, which was also the pressure of like I got all this training and I still didn't know where I want to go, right? So it's kind of funny. That's the human journey. It remains to be written, and we get to be the authors.
That's deep too.
I've got a probably a very unfair question for you then, and the thing is that because you are such a large human being, it's just easy to fling these questions at you, right? And
I haven't gained that much weight, so come on.
No, absolutely. But the thing is that now that you are who you are, and that you are the CEO of a global software company, does that mean that you arrived and that you finished, or does that mean there's what does Jay do next, or have you arrived essentially and you're done?
Oh no. I believe in the infinite mindset. If you guys follow Simon Sinek, I'm working on Jay right now. What I wrote down in my gratitude journal this morning is J 6.0 is almost ready to become a release candidate. So I have these versions of myself, and I do a lot of self-development work, and I will never be finished. Point blank, I'll never be finished. With ENow, we have different challenges. We have the same challenges that IT professionals face, just from a different perspective, right? As the world changes, the problems that we solve have to change. And the velocity of change right now is absurd. I mean, just look at Teams and the number of features that have been developed. So as a software vendor, we have to pick, what problems we solve. As a leader, I have to keep evolving myself. And I think the challenge with being an IT professional and having that core, the very things that attract you to technology are sometimes the opposite of what it takes to be a great leader. When you're working on a project, sometimes it's black and white. It's binary. This is the answer. This is what we're going to do. When it comes to leading humans, that is the farthest from the truth. there is no black and white. I mean, there's certain black and whites on you don't steal, you don't cheat, right? There's core values that is the black and white. But above and beyond that, there's different approaches that people take, different personality types. So what I'm working on right now personally is evolving myself to be a better human, be a better leader. I'll share something with you. I'll share this with the whole world now. I'm working on becoming Joyful Jay. And that's something that I do a lot of work with Tony Robbins. And he really gets at the core of there's things that happen in our life, experiences. We assign meaning to those experiences. And then there's positive and negatives that come from that. And the negatives hold you back as a person. So what I've learned is I've gone through my career and have faced so many challenges. I mean, it's great to be a founder of a company, but there's also lots of challenges. You get a big customer that you thought you wanted, and then you realize, oh, oops, our software doesn't scale. How do we solve that problem? What I'm focusing right now on, and this has a large part to do with my dad's passing, is my dad was a very positive person. We used to say he was unipolar. He was always on cloud nine. You couldn't phase him. He was just very happy. And so what I'm working on is evolving my leadership style and also evolving me, that even when something frustrating happens, which is going to absolutely happen when you're sitting in the seat, you get the hardest problems as a CEO, right? How do I maintain a joyful spirit and just step back and say, you know what? I'm living here in Orange County. I get to service, some of the biggest customers in the world. Yes, we have a challenge, but I'm going to show up as being joyful. And it's not a fake joyful, but it's more of a measured, okay, I understand where I'm at. Yes, this is a problem. Let's take a step back and we can solve it. So to answer your question, I am far away from where I want to be. And I view J 6.0, there's going to be a 7.0. And as the challenges come and I work with my CEO coach and I work with others on my exec team, I just want to keep pushing. And ultimately, we also want to keep solving problems. And the two are inextricably linked. Leadership of my company, if I'm doing a good job leading my company, we then can produce great products and help people. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then some, right? I think that's it's such a it's a really good way to kind of look at things, right? And I think sometimes you take for granted that that's for a lot of us, that's how we just live our lives, right? There's always the next thing, or this evolution of trying to always continue to grow. And but I think for a lot of folks, they get stuck because they work furiously on achieving a particular thing, and then they get to that goal, and then they go, oh, okay, cool. Well, like what next? Or where's next? I've arrived. Like, where's the next thing? And then they get stuck in that sort of comfortable and that rut, right, without ever challenging themselves or pushing themselves. But it's a hard thing to do, and I find certainly in my own life, as I'm getting older, sometimes it's nice to be in the comfortable, right? And you kind of have this false sense of like, okay, maybe we can just sit here for a little bit, right? And then I have to kind of remind myself that, hang on, like I have to be true to who I am as well, which is to continue to try and grow and continue to try and learn and evolve, right? So yeah, I love that answer.
Yeah, I mean the pain you just have, pain comes with growth, right? And that's another one of our that's another one of our core values in our company is grow or die. Either you're growing or you're dying. And I have to remind myself, that's why I do the gratitude list every morning. I have to remind myself that the challenges that are in front of me are an opportunity to grow, no matter how ugly, no matter what mistake I made. And it's very frustrating, but that's where the self-care routine comes in. Nicholas, you were going to say something?
I was. And one of the things I like about what you said, Jay, is that a lot of us are unprepared for success. So we push really hard then when it arrives, we are completely unprepared and we don't know how to deal with it or how to respond to it. And so actually we could either self-sabotage, or we could get into a holding pattern for a while and kind of miss the day of opportunity that arrives because we just weren't prepared for the fact that we could be successful. So the day that it arrives, it's maybe a little bit of a case of, oh no, I have met all of my goals. I've become, whatever that goal might be, I have become the best in the world at something. I've become financially independent, which isn't the only goal in the world. I've achieved whatever that goal is that you set out, and then people get stuck. And what I'm hearing you say is that the goal is actually not the goal. It's the the goal for that version of yourself, and without continued growth, you are actually preparing to be stuck in that rut and potentially lose yourself.
Well, yeah. So I think I'll share something with you that I learned recently, and this is where the whole Joyful Jay concept came from. It was at a Tony Robbins conference in December, and I'm not promoting him. You guys can go look him up, and I don't believe in following any man. But my dad introduced me to Tony's teachings when I was 12. He paid me to listen to Personal Power, his cassette tapes, and I didn't want to listen to him. What 12-year-old would? But he talks about experiences and what the human mind, and the human mind's default state is to go negative. And it comes from the caveman days of fear or flight. So a lot of us, including myself, historically, would look to compare myself to others. And in my case, I have a brother who worked with Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Larry and Sergey, right? Tech titan. But when you compare yourself to others, it's just, that's not a game you ever want to play, because you can always find someone who's done something different than you. And we don't tend to look at all the circumstances that make up that. We just, oh, this person did something and now I'm inferior. But when you're competing against yourself, you can play the game every day. And I think that's where my mindset is how do I show up better every day? And then when I look at the problems that come up, as a CEO, I have a choice. I could blame others or I could own it. And the right answer is own it, right? Because it's my company, I put the people there. And then that gives you the ability to keep kind of pushing forward. And the more you push forward, the more challenges you get, the better you get at it dealing with them. You start building up resilience. And I thought I'd mastered resilience until my dad passed. And then I got hit with a whole new wave of challenges. And then what I wrote down in my gratitude journal is, just like when you lift weights, as you get heavier weights, the only way to get stronger is to get past that breaking point, right? So I think it's mindset that helps. And then not comparing yourself to somebody else and just looking at yourself and saying, hey, what do I want? Where do I want to go? I achieve this goal. And then to get fulfillment, it has to be something that helps other people. Because if it's only, I want the Ferrari, I want these material possessions, and nice cars are cool. I love nice cars. But at the end of the day, if you're only focused on yourself, you will get there with $1 billion and you will not be happy. How many rich people have you seen commit suicide? Right. So fulfillment is a game that we're all playing. And this is just my perspective.
No, and it's an interesting one, right? And I think it's interesting you mentioned Tony Robbins. Like I've obviously known of him for a while, and the two, like I follow you, and we're we've been friends for a while, so I kind of know for the most part what's going on in your life and your journey, and how much I think you've what's the right word? Like how much of an influence Tony Robbins has had in your career and life, right? And I recently kind of came across his new book, and I forget what it's called, Life Force, I think, about kind of a lot of the kind of medical things that he's been looking into, and man, I tell you what, it's some fascinating stuff, right? And I definitely think it has I can see why a lot of people are very polarized by him, right? You either like him or you don't, and because I think he doesn't apologize. He's unapologetically himself, and I think that's pretty awesome. But yeah, certainly been something that I've been kind of looking into, digging into a little bit lately is some of the regenerative medicine and the things that he's been kind of going into in that new book of his, which I thought is pretty awesome. So
there's a tie-in here, like for your audience, like a common thing I've seen happen with IT professionals, and this has become a topic that people feel more comfortable talking about, and I'm so grateful that this has happened. And it's a topic that I'm super passionate about, which is burnout. And I think the IT professional, with the stress of supporting technology, always on, and I think because there's less visibility today because of the cloud, the burnout is real. And one of the things I've learned from Tony and just others, Simon Sinek, there's other great leaders, there's so much content available to us, is the importance of self-care. So if you have an IT job, and by definition, it's a thankless job, and you're under pressure, especially if you're doing a migration and management thinks, oh, we can just go to 365. And obviously the pandemic, one of the big benefits of the pandemic, if I dare say that, is technology just fast forwarded. But the stress of managing technology, the need for self-care, I mentioned multiple times in this interview, doing gratitude lists, having a self-care routine is so critical to be able to avoid the burnout. And that's really where the gratitude, thinking about others, and reminding ourselves, because the mind again takes us straight to the problems. So that's been a huge part of that's been a huge part of me being able to do what I do, is having a very tight self-care routine of gratitude. I mean, I usually wake up at 4:30 in the morning. Nicholas, you and I've chatted probably around that time, and I have a very strict routine that I follow, and that helps me get my head on straight for the day, and then I can go take on the challenges.
Yeah, I think that's you're definitely right to bring up the self-care thing, right? Because I think also our generation generally as well, we don't want to talk about that stuff, right? Because it makes you seem, we don't want to be vulnerable because it makes you seem weak. And I don't think that that's the right approach. And I think more and more folks are starting to kind of come to this realization that, hey, you know what, it's okay to admit when you're having a little bit of a struggle, or when things aren't what they should be, right? When you can't be joyful all the time. I think people who listen to the show kind of know that, you know, there's been a lot of change going on in my life over the last year. 2021 was just it was an insane year. Like, it literally was like February came around and someone just hit the fast forward button, 64x on the year, and it just went just so crazy. Like, the amount of stuff I was juggling, and you kind of get through the end of it and you go, okay, well, cool, let's not do that again. But there's lasting effects to some of these things, right? And I'm starting to see that now, just on a lot of the stuff that I kind of was running through last year. And a lot of it is all sort of, self-imposed, right? Taking on more than you really should, or not knowing when to say no, I think is another really important thing and skill to learn. Is, at what point can you admit that, hang on, I don't know that I should or could be doing this, or when you become known for just like wanting to be helpful and help people, sometimes you just end up overwhelming yourself, right? And that's definitely a lesson that I've learned myself, is, man, and it's a tough to recover.
Chris, you just nailed it. You said the word lesson.
Yeah.
So I have found some of the worst experiences I've had in life have yielded the best gifts. You just have to wait. Like I got married when I was young, and that was a disaster. I wouldn't have the marriage I have today if it wasn't for that disaster. And the true question is, when we go through those, when we get to the end of that period, do we stop and reflect and say, okay, what happened here? What lessons am I going to learn? Take stock, take inventory. And that's the whole human journey, right? And I think you don't know that until you go through it. And that's what life is. We make a series of choices and decisions every day that we think are the best. Some are wrong, some are right. And then you get a problem in front of you. And I think what helps me, because being a founder has been an incredible journey. And it's just been, wow, talk about the whole company, the whole world gets to see my mistakes. Think about that. Very similar to an IT profession. If you mess up and the servers are down, everyone knows your name. Very similar dynamic. I think you have to stop and really that's where the vulnerability comes. And if you can't be vulnerable, if you can't tell the truth, and you can't be transparent, then why live? Are you going to run out, mask and fake ourselves? I mean, I get up regularly in my all hands meetings and say, hey, we missed the mark. I own it. We're going to get better. And I think that's all part of life, right? I mean, it is what it is. I don't like the alternative of trying to fake it. That's not cool.
Yeah. I agree. There's no point to that. And I also agree that you have to take the time to stop and reflect. And as absolutely horrible as a particular experience might be at the time, when you get to the end of that, being able to look back on it, there's always going to be something that comes out of that is worthwhile, right? And that you can kind of cling to as being worthy of the journey. So I want to kind of pivot just a little bit here, because we talked about how things have kind of changed and we have to continue to evolve. And man, we've been on an evolution, I think, as an industry now for more than 2 years at this point, right? With everything being kind of remote. And I mean, I'm not sure what the latest is over in the US, but I know I was in South Africa in February, and things are starting to kind of warm up and get back to normal over there. So I know Nick is almost back to regular life. And over here in Australia, we've now kind of lost, I think, most of all of the restrictions that we've had. And maybe some states might still be a little bit more restricted than others, but where I am in New South Wales, we're pretty much open for business. You've got to wear your mask on public transport and just care about your fellow human beings. Generally, don't be a dick is kind of the mantra here, which works. But I mean, how are you finding things? Are you guys, is things starting to kind of get back to normal? It looks like you might be in the office now. Is that kind of happening?
Yeah, I work 3 days here. We're actually contemplating getting rid of the office. We're in a position where, not that we would ever do this before, but I think certainly there's a new way of thinking where you don't want to require people you want to be flexible, like the hybrid work style. So we have a few people that come in, and we're in an amazing location. I mean, like right behind me is the Irvine Spectrum, but we're spending, $30,000 a month on this place. And it's like, there's like a handful of people here. So I personally like being in the office. I come in 3 days a week. We don't have a policy at work. We let people come and go. I believe in collaboration and getting together and being with people. So that's how that's affecting us. From a standpoint of, are things getting back to normal? We're in Orange County, California. So things have always been more liberal, if you will, in terms of wearing masks. And we were eating outside at restaurants. And I want to be sensitive because obviously people have lost loved ones to COVID, right? So you have to be careful. And then, of course, you have now what's happening with gas prices. Gas prices are about $6.30 a gallon, closer to getting to $7, right? So that has an impact on my workforce and their ability to provide for their families. You have the war that's going on. So I'm starting to think that this is the new normal. The new normal is uncertainty, whether it's going to be the war, what's going to be the next, is COVID going to rise back up again in the fall? I hear it in China that's starting to happen. So I think it's more about, controlling what we can control. And then of course you have the technology impact of all this too, right? So you really have two sides, but from a work standpoint, we're being flexible. Does that answer the question?
No, absolutely it does. Yeah. Because, I think one of the things that the tune that we continue to sing every time we get together is how much we miss in-person conferences and events and stuff, right?
True.
Certainly for us, that's always been one of the benefits of working hard, right? Like you have this kind of 3 months or 2 months of the year where you're traveling, you're going to conferences, and not that in any way, like certainly the way I do it, and I think Nick does the same, is if we ever speak at events, it's hard work, right? Anyone who thinks that speaking at an event or at a conference is just a junket where you're hanging around with your mates, it's not. It's certainly, if you do it right, it's not. It's there's a lot of prep time and kind of rehearsal time and just making sure you're getting it right for the audience, right? If someone takes the time to come to a session that I'm presenting, I want to make sure that they leave that session with the best possible experience and the best possible info. And to get to that, it takes work, right? But certainly, like I've always seen it as it's you work really hard during the beginning of the year, and then that last, those last couple of months of the year where conference season hits, it's a nice time to be able to say, okay, well, let's go and catch up with everyone from the industry that we haven't seen for a while. I know. I can't remember the last time I worked in California, but we had dinner that one time, and I mean it must have been 5 years ago now, because we've had pandemic for 2.
It might be longer than time, Chris. I mean,
it might actually, might, because sometimes I spent a lot of time working on the other coast for a while before I left too. But as I was saying, the sort of in-person conference is something that we really miss. But it sounds like stuff's starting to happen again, right? There's something coming up. Is it in a couple of weeks? We're talking about the M365 conference.
So from my understanding, at this time, Microsoft's not planning Ignite. And from my sources, they say we're not planning it right now. So they have like this open-endedness to it.
Yeah, it's like there's an out, right?
Yeah, and I think with the pandemic, certainly there was very positive things that came out of the pandemic. All the technology walls came down. The number of people that adopted Teams, all the red tape, just like boom, we have no choice. Which so I think from a technology standpoint, that was amazing. The amount of time that we got with our families was amazing. Being at home, and as much as there was fear and anxiety, we were with our family a lot. And so the amount of quality time the human race got was pretty profound. Now, there's a long list of negatives that came from it. And I think what you're seeing in the workforce right now with the Great Resignation, I think people are burnt out, right? When you're on a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, the conversation tends to be about the problem you're facing, versus when you're in the office and you say, hey, Emily, let's go get some coffee. you start to talk about, oh, you're getting married and this is going on, or you're a football fan, you're talking about the game, the human connection, the experience. Same thing with the events and conferences. There was such a void created. And one of the biggest reasons why we throw our parties and just love the events is it's an opportunity for the community to come together, clients, partners, MVPs, where you can talk about technologies, you can just talk about friendship, right? So we've missed that huge gap. So what we're doing as a company right now is we're charting a course for several events. We signed up with the folks at the Microsoft 365 conference. If you go to m365conference.com, or if you email us at ENow, we have discounted tickets. They're putting on a show April 5th through the 7th in Las Vegas. So by the time this comes out, it'll still be an opportunity to go. Jeff Tepper is going to be there speaking. Several Microsoft people, several MVPs, Martina and Tony Grom are going to be there. ENow is hosting a VIP dinner. We're hosting a scheduled maintenance party at the top of the stratosphere. If you've never been to the top of the stratosphere, we're going to have an epic party there to celebrate. Wow. It'll be safe. Everyone's being COVID tested, vaccine card. We got the bases covered. But I think there's a void, Chris. And it feels like with the pandemic, like it feels like I haven't seen you in 3 or 4 years. Even it's probably only been maybe 2. We've spoken here or there. But there's nothing like having a glass of scotch, sitting across the table and saying, hey, what's going on in your life? And not talking about solving a problem. It's more the human connection. So
exactly, yeah,
right, and that's sorely lacking. Even this conversation's bringing it back, because I mean, when I go to the conferences, I just love talking to people and just, that's what we do is we go talk, and I like hearing what's going on because I'm always on the search for new problems to solve. And naturally, when you talk, great things come out of it. But we have the M365 conference that is for sure confirmed. There's a whole host of other conferences we're in the process of selecting. And again, it's about being with the community. Last thing I'll say about the M365 conference is Veeam is sponsoring our party. We cannot do these events alone. They cost a lot of money, especially if we have the top shelf alcohol and we like to have epic locations. So they're going to be helping us as well. And they sponsored multiple parties. And I think the one thing that for sure Veeam and I share in common, and there's an MVP that runs their evangelist group by the name of Rick. He's all about the community. And I think that's really where it begins and ends. It begins with us. It always starts with people that are like-minded that want to solve problems. And then from there, you can grow anything.
Yeah, I must say, so I'm quite bummed that I missed, somehow I missed, well, actually, I know exactly how. Is I haven't been paying attention. That's how. The M365.
Last part in the way, Chris.
Yeah, the M365 conference. I would have loved to make the trip over for that. I just by the time I found out, it was just too short notice for me to kind of rearrange my schedule to get over to Vegas. But I would have.
You're working on slowing down, so we're good. There'll be other shows.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we need to touch base on what the other shows are that you guys are going to be involved with, so that we can get Cloud Architects presence there as well potentially, and see what we can do about that, because that would be pretty epic. I definitely miss it, and there has, if Ignite isn't going to happen this year, then there's got to be something else, right? We can kind of work towards and kind of where we can get together and just kind of share stories and see how everyone's doing and touch base with people, because it's great. We have this touch point and we get to talk a little bit, but there's so many other people in the community that we just don't see unless you bump into them at conferences, right? Things like that.
Yeah, and and life keeps going, right? So the conference gives us a chance to pause and catch up on life, and we haven't had that. And I think there's more work. I mean, how many of us are in back-to-back meetings? I had to tell my team, like, guys, I can't. I was starting to get burnt out by all the meetings. I'm like, well, we got to have a break here. Need some time to think and need some time to connect. So absolutely, Chris, I'll reach out to you and we'll keep you in the loop as to what events we're doing, and we'll have that up on our site as well.
Cool. And of course, scheduled maintenance. Everyone knows scheduled maintenance. So if you're going to be going to Vegas, have a look out for that, because that'll be epic. Stratosphere, man, come on. that's and there've been some epic ones over the years as well, right? I don't even want. I was thinking about it last night when I was kind of prepping for this recording. I thought about all of the events that we've done, or at least that ENow have done, that I have been fortunate enough to attend, and there've been some pretty awesome ones. There've definitely been 1 or 2 in Vegas, and some other ones across the country, Chicago, I think, and everywhere else. So it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, Chicago will go down in memory, but it's the people that make the event. And so like Stephen Rose is going to be at our event at the party. I had an opportunity to meet him yesterday and get to know him. What an awesome.
He's great.
Very
Awesome.
cool. He's a big friend of the show as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be bringing a lot of the speakers to the party. But it's a combination of the speakers, the MVPs, the customers, the partners. Everyone just the whole idea behind schedule maintenance is we have to do the hard work and patch servers and just IT is not a glorious job. It's getting cooler, and definitely it's getting cooler, but it's not as glorious as it could be. So the idea is let's go have some fun and let's blow off some steam and let's talk and let's connect. Right.
The last time we had Stephen on the show, he wore an Iron Man helmet, which was just epic. So we have some sort of preview material that we did with him where he was wearing an actual Iron Man helmet, which and when you know him, then you go, well, of course he's wearing an Iron Man helmet because that's what he does, right? Or that's that's something that's completely on brand for him. But he always.
I didn't know him. I just reached out to him on LinkedIn and told him what the party was about and our events and said I'd love to connect, not thinking I'd get a response back because people at Microsoft are extremely busy. He instantly wrote back. We started chatting. Next thing you know, we're on Teams call. I got to know him, and again, back to the community, back to why I'm grateful.
Yeah,
you can't do anything great by being alone. That is one thing I absolutely believe in, and you need a lot of support.
Yeah, very true, very true.
The irony is that Jay got to meet the magic that is Steve, and Steve got to meet the magic that is Jay. So it's community is amazing, and none of us would be here without someone who believed in us. And what I love about Steve is that he believed in many people and created a platform for them. And some of the people that listen to the show know exactly what he's done for them. And it's the kind of thing that he doesn't even ask to be recognized for. He sees a human being that he wants to invest in, and he gets behind them and he does it. So big for Mr. Rose.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I almost thought you lost power there again, and I was about to say, "Damn, we lost you," but you came back, so that's good.
I was hoping that wasn't my connection.
No.
I know.
Nick has these occasional blips where it just well, in fairness, it's happened to me before as well, where I kick my power cord out for like the camera or something, and then I just go black. So these things happen.
It's technology.
So okay, so I think we've had this has been a really great conversation about looking back and where we've come from and kind of how you got started. How about if we look ahead? Like, we're in a very interesting time, I think, from a technology perspective now. Like, things are rapidly changing, as you said. I think a lot of folks have kind of called COVID like the biggest change agent we've ever seen, and I think that's pretty accurate. But where do you think we're going to go? I mean, what are your thoughts as to what are you guys doing as ENow? Any cool things that you guys are working on that you want to talk about or can talk about?
I can talk about something. So let's talk about change. So I think with the cloud, the whole model changed. And the problem that the cloud saw, and specifically with 365, is when you looked at Microsoft's back office applications, and let's go back a little bit and call it Lync before it evolved into Teams. Lync, Exchange, SharePoint, getting those products to work together technically wasn't a challenge. I mean, there was definitely challenges in getting to work together, but it really rarely did you see an organization had everything configured and having it all working together. And the reason for that, from my vantage point, is humans, politics, different departments, right? So Microsoft has solved that problem. They've integrated the service and now have given that to us. But now there's a whole new set of problems. What is the administrative model? You have a governance problem. You have a whole set of new challenges that have arisen. So I think the new challenge is watching and keeping up with the rate of change, and then looking at where the opportunities are in the market. For ENow, monitoring and analytics has always been our bread and butter. So what we're doing is we're continuing to double down. We have a release coming out very soon that is going to greatly expand the number of synthetic transactions that we do for OneDrive with SharePoint. And so for those that don't know who ENow is, we take a very unique approach to monitoring. So going back to my admin days, one of my frustrations was in working with, and I'm not knocking these tools, but I was truthfully working with NetIQ, some of the Quest products. And the frustration I had was it felt like the screen was throwing up at me. And I had a huge environment to manage, 18,000 users. And it was hard to get actionable insights as to what's happening. So what ENow is, one of the things we really care about is taking the complex and making it simple and giving you visibility into the cloud. So if you are in a hybrid environment or you have Office 365, when there's an outage, do you know if it's a Microsoft problem or if it's a you problem? And if it's a you problem, where in your organization is it a you problem? Is it a certificate? Is it with the authentication team? Is it with the networking team? So our software does a really good job of kind of pointing you in the right direction in a very simplistic view. What we're focused on right now is doubling down into SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. So we've always been like the market leader for Exchange. And now we have a whole host of synthetic transactions. When I say synthetic transactions, I'm not talking about a browser plugin. I'm talking about connecting to the service like a user, uploading and downloading a file, changing things. The breadth is pretty deep. I don't want to make this a product pitch, but that's one particular area that's always been our bread and butter. A new problem that we've heard from our clients over the past year has been getting visibility into license consumption. And so with Microsoft raising prices, a lot of people are having a lot of heartburn over that. The prices have gone up from 10 to 15 to 16%. I run a software company. It costs money to make features. I understand why Microsoft's doing it, but there's just been a lot of frustration. And the frustration that we're seeing is when it comes time to negotiate with Microsoft or get visibility, finance doesn't have the tools. The native tools are just sorely lacking. They come over to IT and say, help us figure this out. And IT is like, what do you mean you want to help us figure this out? Let's go look at the activity reports. I go look at the same thing. And it creates a problem that, I mean, let's be honest. What IT person wants to work on license optimization, right? I mean, I speak to them all the time. So what we're working on is taking that problem away from them and now giving finance a dashboard. So in our release that we have out now, we can help identify overlapping licenses, duplicate licenses, inactive licenses. Hey, what about John that you gave a Visio license to 5 months ago? He's not using it, but someone else wants Visio. When was the last time you purchased license? Who purchased the licenses, right? Definitely, it's not a very sexy problem, but it is a problem that is causing IT folks 60, 70 hours to work with. And I see it as a problem that's not going to go away. As SaaS providers continue to iterate, they're changing their licensing model, and becoming a licensed SME is on no one's list.
Right? Exactly.
What's in an E5, what's in the security bundle? How do I get DLP? We've had to kind of learn a lot of this. So that's one problem we're solving. And then moving into Teams, we're getting into some more monitoring that can help. I mean, you talked about the pandemic, huge portion of the workforce still at home. When there's a problem with Teams call quality, is it because of the home router? Is it because of the person's setup, or is it a problem with Teams? So we're looking into all those areas. And then we have a bunch of more stuff that's on the roadmap that I can't talk about, but maybe in another quarter or two, you guys have me back on and I can share some other challenges. But certainly a lot of change that's happening. And what we're trying to do is keep up with it and just really listen to our clients. That's a big competitive differentiator. We really listen to clients and then add that to our roadmap.
Yeah, fair enough. And that licensing challenge, not only is it not a sexy problem to solve, it's a difficult problem to solve because folks don't, if you're a large organization, the amount of duplication you potentially have in the licenses that you've purchased because, we want that feature. And because of course you can get, X feature in like 4 different SKUs, right? And so you end up layering SKU upon SKU. I think, I can definitely see where there'd be some real value, especially for larger orgs where there's a lot of duplicate there. So interesting stuff and exciting. So Jay, conscious of the time here as well. I know you're kind of about to fire up a work day. So before we let you go, we've talked about ENow a little bit. We've talked about the scheduled maintenance party. Is there something else that you want to plug, or is there a way for folks to get hold of you if they wanted to talk? Are you open to those types of things? How would you like to be reached? Go ahead if there's anything that you'd like to promote or plug.
No, I mean, I'm grateful for the work that you guys are doing, right? You're doing a service to the IT community. I'm grateful to be on the show. And then both of you guys have helped ENow throughout the years. So just, I really don't have anything to plug. If someone wants to talk about the entrepreneurial journey, or, I pretty much have made every mistake in the book. So this is something I'm passionate about. Not only am I a member of the Tony Robbins group, I'm a member of Entrepreneurs Organization. It's something I just, man, I love helping other entrepreneurs. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jay Gundotra. You can reach out to me on email. It's funny, my wife and I were talking about shortening my email address. I got to get our IT folks to change my alias. It's j.gundotra@enowsoftware.com. But yeah, reach out to me if I can help. I mean, so many people have helped me along the way. And again, just super grateful for the opportunity to chat with you guys, and hopefully we'll do it soon over a glass of scotch at an event. And if not now, I'm sure Microsoft's going to bring back Ignite, and we'll be together soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I definitely look forward to that. I think there's so much more we could potentially catch up on as well. But yeah, having you back anytime, you're always welcome. We like to kind of have these open invitations to our guests. So anytime you want to come back, feel free to reach out, and we'll have you back. And man, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy too, so thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And yeah, we'll see you around, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys both. I really appreciate it.